Welcome to Beyond the Competition, the SAE University Programs Podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Mike Sawyer, the podcast and media producer with the SAE University Programs. And I got with me, of course, as usual, Scott Schultz. You see him on CDS Action News, sometimes at the registration desk or whatnot. How you doing there, Scott?
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
Good. And today, very excited. It's going to be, I think everybody's going to be interested in this, that's interested in design and materials, but we're going to be very formula focused today. And we got, from across the pond, we have Alton Coolidge, team member with Olin College of Engineering. How you doing, Alton?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Glad to have you join us from across the pond there. As we're here in Pittsburgh in the United States, of course. But we like to kick it off here with a Let's Get Weird question. Scott, take it away.
That's right. Owen, we like to get weird on this podcast. Are you ready to get weird with us?
I think I'm ready.
I don't know if you've ever been asked this before, but if you could be a beverage, what beverage would you be?
I think I'd probably have to go with orange juice because it would be probably what I personally drink most.
Okay, yeah. Would you have pulp or no pulp?
I'd go with pulp. I'd prefer pulp.
Okay.
Say everything we need to know about you. I am curious thinking the personality differences between pulp and no pulp.
Yeah, pulp, you have no secrets.
It's all out there for everybody to see.
All out there, yeah.
Everybody knows what's up. He's a trustworthy man.
little fresher, I think, too. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, let's find out more about you here, Alton. First of all, you are, as we mentioned, currently in Scotland. What brought you over there?
I think it was mostly my dad. He had always sort of talked about Scotland fondly. And so I'd seen pictures of sort of the really pretty landscapes and the highlands and things like that. And so I was always interested, and I was given the opportunity to come study abroad here. I'd actually applied to go to college here when I was back applying things and didn't end up going. So I was excited to now get the chance to actually come check it out.
What SAE teams have you been a part of?
I've been a part of Baja and Formula. I haven't actually gone to competitions for either because I joined Baja in freshman year and then sort of was checking out other things sophomore year, and now joined freshly Formula as well. But I've been part of the two teams, and I'm looking forward to go to competitions for either or both.
Oh, so you're a junior?
Yeah, I'm a junior.
Let's talk about this Hemp Aero kit that you developed for your SAE Formula car. So what was your role in this project, and tell us a little bit about kind of like what it is.
So my role was mostly sort of project manager. I also did some design on specifically the front wing. The project really came along because I and a few other students at Olin were looking for a chance to sort of get into aerodynamic design, which wasn't something that was really offered at our project teams because they're quite small and we're limited on sort of resources and people or in sort of classes. And so we were just looking for a chance to learn some of those skills and just get to try working with, air and composites and all of these things. And so I started this little team and got some of my friends to join, and we're really just giving it a shot to see if we could see any, notable performance increase from what we made on the Formula car.
What were the main objectives of this project?
The main objectives were really just from a learning standpoint. None of us had really had any experience coming in. So we were looking for some drag to lift coefficients and things like that. But it was never something that we had outlined. It was just sort of goals we had set for the fun of it to see if we could get sort of a high level of performance from what we were making. But the goal was really to learn how to do these things so that we could come back a second time with the knowledge we learned and do it properly.
What led you to choose hemp for the Aero kit, and how did it compare to materials like carbon fiber or fiberglass that we usually see at these competitions?
Yeah, the decision to hemp had sort of a few reasons, and it wasn't me who originally suggested it. It was someone else on the team who suggested that we use it for the two reasons that it's a lot more environmentally friendly. because it is sort of an organic material and it's a lot easier to dispose of, as well as the fact it's a lot easier for us to work with. We don't have a super um, set up composites area to work with. And especially when it comes to cutting things like fiberglass or carbon fiber, it's a pretty technical process to make sure it's safe because they are carcinogens and the fibers can get in your lungs and it's pretty hard to deal with. Whereas hemp is not a carcinogen and is a lot easier to cut without worrying about the particulate matter getting into your lungs and getting into the air. And so those are the two main things we went with is because it was a lot easier to work with was sort of the biggest one, and the fact that it was a lot more environmentally friendly, as well as just the fact that we wanted to try it and see what we could do.
Yeah, what were some of the challenges you faced when designing this aero kit?
I think a lot of the challenges came from the fact that we really just didn't know exactly what we were doing. And so there were some things where you'd get into a project and you'd look back a day or a week later and you would sort of realize that you'd done it wrong or that you'd made it a lot more complicated than it needed to be. So when it came to design, there were just little things in terms of we tried really hard to use ANSYS, but we were working on sort of limited laptops and with a CAD that had never been set up for use with computational fluid dynamics or anything like that. And so that proved to be really challenging to make it work. And then on the physical side of things, none of us had ever really done a lot of work with composites, especially wing foils or anything like that. And so working with a new material that wasn't really established in the hemp, it wasn't even actually a proper composite weave. It was a weave meant for chair upholstery. And so we're really just sort of seeing what we could make work. And yeah, that was the biggest challenges were just the unknown. But I think we learned a lot in sort of charging ahead and seeing what we found.
Can you describe the fabrication process of this front wing and any difficulties encountered while working with the hemp composites?
Fabricating it, we had a foam core that was just made out of pink insulation foam, which I think is pretty common. And we used a wire cutter or a hot wire cutter from our um, design build fly team who builds remote control planes. So they had sort of some experience working with wing shapes, and so we relied on them for help. And so essentially, what we did to get the profiles was we 3D print or we laser cut the profiles, and then stuck them to the ends of the foam board, and then traced the um, laser cut profiles with the hot wire in order to get the shape. So getting the shape wasn't terrible. There were a few sort of things we had to figure out in terms of speed and things like that to do that. But definitely the bigger challenge was using the composite we had, again, because it wasn't a proper composite of any specific weight. It was a lot heavier than fiberglass or carbon fiber typically would be in its sort of thickness. And so ultimately, we used very few layers and a lot of epoxy, which meant that it took a while to dry and it's a lot heavier than it needed to be if it was fiberglass. So I think the biggest drawback and challenge we had was working with sort of the fabric we had, not so much the material, but the weave of the fabric.
How do you see the sustainable materials like hemp influencing the future of automotive design and performance?
I would like to think that they'd have a lot larger impact than they do now. Uh, I think they're I have not done a ton of research or testing into the hemp. I doubt it's as um, light or as strong as something like carbon fiber would be when it's used perfectly in an autoclave and at the very high levels. But certainly for what we were doing, the hemp was no heavier than a carbon fiber or fiberglass part of similar size. Just because we're not vacuum sealing everything and doing everything properly. And the majority of the weight comes from the epoxies. So I think, especially in sort of the prototyping phase and things like that, hemp is just as good of an alternative as compared to something like carbon fiber or fiberglass with a lot less of the impacts. So I think in something like prototyping, I would hope to see it has a lot more use um, because it's safer to work with for both the people working with the material and the environment. And it's a lot easier to discard once you're done. So I think those are some of the advantages, and I would imagine that it could make its way into prototyping, if not actual racing, as well as it was a lot cheaper than carbon fiber. So for running on a college budget, that was also quite nice.
So how again did we arrive at using hemp as a material alternatively? Where did you discover that as an option?
That was suggested by someone who was on the team. It was one of our early meetings. We were sort of discussing what we wanted to do, and we were talking about what we wanted to do in terms of composites. And he made the suggestion that we should use hemp. And we all liked the idea because it's so much easier to work with in the space we had, because we were able to cut it and shape it and things like that a lot more easily without the risk of health. And so it was really just a suggestion that came up early on, and we then did some research into where we could buy such a material, and we found a sort of nearby store that sold it for upholstering chairs, and it was really inexpensive. And we decided we might as well give it a go, and we did some tests on sort of little canard-like shapes, and they came out pretty well, and we decided we'd go for it.
It is interesting because I can't imagine too many Formula teams are getting their materials from a furniture store.
Yeah, probably
like that
not.
seems pretty wild, right? Generally, do we think this is going to be, I think you're one of the first teams doing this, right? So do you see this kind of, is it, more cost effective? Like what's the full, what's the final word on like the benefits of doing it this way from what you've learned so far?
I think for us, it was a lot more cost effective. The material was less expensive, and the tools needed to work with it were a lot less expensive. As well as the fact that our team is less than 50 people. And so we're really just looking to sort of get the practice and be as competitive as we can. But really, sort of, the goal of the team is much more to learn and to sort of try new things. And so I think for our team, it was a really good decision to try something new, because we probably aren't. I mean, I would hope that we could be going to be sort of competing for the top places. So I think the potential, half a second that you lose trying out something new is absolutely worth what you might be able to learn and discover. So that was how we decided to go for it. And yeah, we'll continue trying it out.
Excellent. Well, hey, as we're recording this, we are you, I forget, are you coming to the May or the June edition? I didn't catch what your car was.
The kit we made will not actually, I think, even be in competition this year. So we made it for an older version of the car because our newer version of the car had yet to be made. So it was pretty much completely a test bed. But we're hoping for next year we will be able to add Aero to our competition car, would be the goal.
Alton, it's been great having you on. Thanks for sharing this. I'm hopefully this inspires some other people to maybe do the same. And again, like the more people working on this, the more that you guys improve and learn from each other, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
you don't want to be the only one working on this at this point, right?
Yeah, no, it's fun to have people to bounce ideas off of and to compete with. And I think that's really what this competition strives at or excels at, is creating that competition that creates sort of new ideas. And so I hope that there's more and more people that give it a try.
Hey, Alton, if anybody wants to have this conversation with you about like what you're doing and, talk to other teams or anybody else interested, like where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I think probably the easiest way is through LinkedIn, which should just be Alton Coolidge, I think is just the name I have, as well as I have a website, altoncoolidge.com, easily enough, that has links to sort of video series on the project, as well as any sort of contact information for me. So I think those are probably the easiest two options.
Very cool.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really cool, really innovative, really fun to hear. And for two people that don't do aero, It was actually interesting for us too. So thank you so much, Alton, for joining us. And again, for those out there, please, we're getting into the competition. We're getting deep into the competition series here very soon in a few weeks. Make sure, especially a lot of you Formula students are probably listening to this, download that Formula SAE app. Make sure you're following your news items, all those lovely messages from Scott over here. Let you know, make sure you're hitting all your deadlines going into the competition to make it the best competition possible for you and your team. And of course, stay tuned right here on this podcast feed or the YouTube channel for Beyond the Competition and SAE University programs so you don't miss a conversation, the CDS news, and the other great videos. We've had visits. Recently, we've recorded and released or going to release visits with teams from UCLA, University of Pennsylvania, and so much more. A visit to the SEMA garage for the SoCal SAE chapter. A lot of great stuff coming up on the multimedia channels for SAE University programs. Thank you guys so much. Until next time, stay safe out there. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Competition, the SAE University Programs podcast. Show notes for this episode can be found at beyondthecompetition.fireside.fm. Remember to stay tuned for updates on your competition's newsfeed or app and follow SAE_University programs on TikTok and Instagram. Stay safe out there and we'll see you next episode.